Okay. I believe we're right at the top. Any not been sorry at yoichel bosor v'yishte yayin. Taner Rabbanan. Achal kol ma'achal v'loyachal bosor. Shosa kol mashka v'lo yayin. Eina nasa ben sorry mer at yoichel bosor v'yishte yayin. Shenemer zoylel v'soyve. V'yav raya l'dover zeichel l'dover. Even though you don't have a klor raya, that zoyl only means Basar and soive only means wine. We do have a remes, shenemar alti b'seive yain b'zayle basar lomoy. So you see at least that soive could refer to wine and zoyle could refer to basar. Voimer he soive v'zoylel yivaresh. Someone who fresses and intoxicates himself will become poor. Ukaroyim talbish numa. Who will wear torn clothing? Someone who's always sleeping and who's lazy and who's not productive. Amrab Zeir, Kalayasham Beves Medrash. Somebody who always falls asleep in the Besmedrash. He's not learning with a chias. Tayrasai Naisas like Kroim Kroim. His Torah becomes in bits and pieces. Shanamar Kroim Talbush Numa. So the Maral says Pshat in this is that when you learn Torah, that from learn with a chias, you always have to be pumped up. You have to be on adrenaline when you learn. Otherwise, you're not zoche to Torah. But on a practical level, if you fall asleep and then the oilam continues, and then you wake up and then you continue with them, so you miss pieces. So it's kroim. It's very. If you want to know exactly what this looks like, I'll show you my notes of Rebel Yashir. You'll see this is exactly what it is. Shenemar kroim talbush shiluma. So you see the words, and then also you see a pen mark that drops down 4 inches. Because when I fell asleep, my thing goes. So that's what it is. And I could tell you, you don't even know the part that you wrote. Did I just say that loud? Talk to me more about it. Gonav Mishal Oviv, the Achal B'Shusov. He stole from his father's rishus, and he ate it in his father's house. Or Mishal Acherim, he stole from someone else. And we're going to see the distinction is when you steal from your father, it's easy to steal. You're there, you're around. Stealing from somebody else, breaking into somebody else is a little bit harder to do. Eating rishus Oviv is a little harder to do because your father could see. What are you doing? If you eat it, if you steal from your father and you eat it somewhere else, then you don't get caught so easily. So Mishal Acherim, you stole Mishal Acherim, v'achal b'shus Acherim, or Mishal Acherim, v'achal b'shus Aviv. Either way, Eina Nasa ben Sarah Moyer, Achi Yignov Mishal Aviv, he has to steal from his father's and v'yoichal b'shus Acherim. Rashi says, Mishal Acherim, v'afilu loy achlan b'shus Bailam. If you stole it from Acherim, but you didn't need it b'shus Bailam, it's still not going to be. I'm sorry. It's not enough just to. It's not enough just to steal from his father. He also has to steal from his mother. Zok to Gemara. Gonav mishal aviv the achal b'shus aviv afal gav de shchiachle. Even though it's easy for him to steal from his father because he lives there, boys, he's still afraid. His father's eventually going to chap what's going on, and therefore it's not something that's going to become a common occurrence. It's not going to go on and on. And remember, the key to becoming a ben tzari moyer is addictive behavior that's sustainable. Right, that's where the meat has to be cheap. It has to be sustainable. It has to be the type of meat. He has to be willing to eat the meat that's not fully prepared. If he dafka wants his meat perfectly prepared, he's never going to be able to be a gangster because he's always going to be too particular about how his meat is prepared. It has to be attainable. It has to be addictable. Okay? Zok Gemara weiter. Avagav d'shchiach leibois mishal acherim v'achal b'shus acherim. Avagav leibos. He's not afraid of getting caught by his father, but lo shchiach lei. It's not as easy to steal from a stranger. Rather, which has both problems. Side where he stole it from is not so easily it's not so easy for him to get. And Ubois, and he's eating it by his father, so his father's going to chap that he's eating something that he didn't buy him. So therefore, it's only considered a behavior that could become a pattern is if it's a yignav mishaloviv v'yoichel b'shosacherim dishchiachlei and v'loibos. As Rashi says, at yignav mishaloviv dishchiachlei lignav tamid, but v'achal b'shosacherim v'loibos shalo yireu of. V'chihai gavna mimshech, that's something that could become addictive. Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda Omer, at yignav mishaloviv mishalim. Correct Gemara, the obvious simple question. Imay minallah. We know Masha Kanisha, Kanabaila. So the very first obvious answer that someone might suggest is maybe they're divorced. So the Gemara doesn't even suggest that. I hear. But what the Rishonim say is if she's divorced, then there's a whole different problem of they have to say it because we learned they have to have a similar type of voice. But in means they have to sort of speak with the same voice. If they're divorced, even married couples don't exactly agree on everything, but generally speaking, they share common beliefs. But if they're divorced, they're definitely not speaking with a common voice. So, so where would she have any money from? What it means is you know what this is? This was a meal. The father has to support his wife. He has to give her to eat. So the suda that was prepared, so that's his mother, that's on his father's. Now, there's a lot of raid on this because the suda that's prepared still the father's, not the mother's. She's going to eat it. He's going to feed it to her, but that doesn't make it hers. So there's a lot of Torah on this. The Amar Rab Chanan bar Mulda bar Mylada Amar Rav Huna Einay Chayiv At Sheyikne Basar Bezoil V'Yoichel Yain Bezoil. Didn't we learn that he has to actually? At Sheyikne Basar Bezoil V'Yoichel Kama Yain Bezoil V'Yishta. He has to buy it. It's not enough that he just should acquire food. So if he just took food that was prepared for his mother and his father, that doesn't make him into a B'tzar Moyer. Only if he actually bought it with money. There was money that was put away to pay for the restaurant bill tonight, and he took that money, which is even a greater kasha of how does that belong to his mother. Or it's speaking where somebody was makne to his mother money almanas that her husband shouldn't have a koich in it, which is also a huge Torah. And I'll just touch on some of the basics. But let's just first just see Rashi. Midmei suda hamuchenes shahu mois muchanim liknois mehem suda lavavim. They put away money that they were going to go to a restaurant with. The kivan the lakach nizdamnu, since that's what they're set aside for. Mishal imoy karinen behu. We call it mishal imoy. The inami shaycha behem midina the bailachayim v'mzaynesel. Again, which is interesting that God gives her some level of bilas in the money when he just has to buy her food. Now, the other traditions, we've heard this many times before, but this is the makar all over Shas. If he didn't say that, it will be no different than mitziyasa. So this is a big kasha. Let's have a look at Tosfos first. It helps. Aval Rabbi Lazar Svir Lei that Filukai Gavna ain't kinyan laeved b'lei rabbi and the ain't kinyan laeved b'lei baila. When we call Makar Masnisan Latiksha, Armish is not shver because he could answer like the other terrorists of Meshana b'demei Suda Mechenes Limoy, which is shver in and of itself. Inami Rabbi Lazar have a mukila b'shenosan la baila. Maybe if the husband gave her money, that would be hers. So he could give her things. Now, this halacha, if there's a halacha, how could a third party give her money and condition it so that the person who she's meshubah to, the person who she's owned by, so to speak, doesn't have a chelik. How do you do that? How does that work? And if it does work in the following way? Let's say Chaim Yankel owes $100,000 to Beryl. And I want to give Chaim Yankel a gift, and I don't want to go to Beryl, even though he owes a lot of money. Could I say, I'm giving this to you, Chaim Yankel Almanas, that any people who you owe money, any shibudim that you have, any person you're obliged to, ain't lem shusbeh. Can you do that? So these shilas all stem out of this Gemara here, because this is the main place where you find this. Yeah, it's not the first time that we had it, but I think it's the main makar of it that always refers back to this sugya. This is like all the times we had it, it comes from here. This is where it comes from. So that's why this is an important Gemara. And of course, there's a lot of Torah about it that we wouldn't have time to talk about, even if I didn't come with it. Haya Oviv Roitza, Ve'ima Eina Roitza. What if his father says, that's it, we're taking him to Bezin, enough is enough? And his mother says, no, let's give him another chance. Or Oviv Eina Roitza, Ve'ima Roitza. Either way, Eina Nasa Ben Saru Moira, Achi Yehu, Shneyem Roitza, until they both want to do this to him. If his mother wasn't appropriate for his father, and we'll see what that means, such a person could not become a B'tzar Moyer. So Revel said over from Rabbi Gedal Yeshur, one of the reasons why we're going to learn that today about a B'tzar Moyer never happened. Why B'tzar Moyer never happened? Why? Because it says his father and his mother have to take him to get killed. Which normal parents in their right mind are going to take their children to have them killed? It's insanity. Elamai, it's parents that have such clarity about what's ultimately the best for their son that they know this is the best for their son. Such parents wouldn't have been Sarah Umayr. That's what he said over from Gedal Yeshur. Zokta more weiter. So ma'ayin ruya. What does it mean that they weren't made for each other? The Shafkan thought it was a perfect shidduch. Ilay mechayve krisos. If you're going to say that they're also to each other with a chi of krisos, or v'chayve misas besdin, so big deal. Who said they have to be a married couple? Soif, avua is avua ninu, ve'ima ima ninu. It doesn't say that they have to be married. It just says v'tavsavoy ava ve'ima. It doesn't say v'tavsavoy ava ve'ishtai. Ella, what it means is b'shava la'aviv ka'amar. She has to be similar to her husband. What does it mean? Similar to her husband. Rashi says b'koil. She has to have a similar voice. Uvamara, I would never want to marry someone who looked like me. V'koime, and in height. The time of Mefarish L'Kaman, and the Gemara is going to shortly explain it. Tanya Namehochi, B'koil, Uvamara, Uv'koime, and you not to Moira, my time with Amarka, and then Shemaya B'koilenu. B'koilenu Zok Rashi is Chad Koil Mashma. It doesn't say Koiloi Seinu, or Koilenu with a Yud. It says Koilenu, which means our voice, which is like one voice. So once me the Koil Ba'inyan Shavan, since the Pasuk B'Koilenu establishes that their voices have to be similar, logic would dictate that Ma'ir V'Koim Nami Ba'inyan Shavan. And therefore, if they don't look alike, this boy cannot be a B'tzar Moyer. This is another reason why he's very unlikely to ever have a B'tzar Moyer. Kaman Asla. Tanya ben Sarah Moira loy hoya v'loy asid liyos v'lam nichtav v'zay v'chalal. Why does the Torah say it? Because of droish v'kabel schar. Command Rabbi Yehuda. It's like Rabbi Yehuda who says that they have to be shava b'koil uvamara b'koil, and that's so unlikely to occur. Therefore, ben Sarah Moira is academic. It's an academic sugya. Rabbi Shimoni. Now, figuratively, the Welt says that they have to have one voice, because in order to be mechanech children, both parents have to be on the same place, right? They have to have the same position. If they don't have one voice, so then it's not the B'tzar Moir's fault. It's the B'tzar Moir. It's the parents' fault. So therefore, you wouldn't charge him as a B'tzar Moir. He's only a B'tzar Moir if his chinuch was good, because his parents were both on the same team. And they weren't confusing him with a mix of ideals. Okay. Zok tehillah gedol more weiter. Ibai sema Rab Shimon the Tanya Amar Rab Shimon. I don't understand. V'chim ifnei jo'achal zeh Tartimar basa. Vishosa chati lug yain hoitalki. Okay, it's a bad habit, but like, isn't it a little bit radical? Isn't it a little bit Taliban to kill somebody because he overate a little bit? Ella loy haya loy asad liyos, which is what Mati said. Which parents would take their child to get killed because he was a little bit indulgent. V'lama nichtav. So why Bechalal is the parsha of Ben Tzayir Moyer written in the Torah? George Vikiboscha. I'm Rabbi Yonason. What are you talking about? Anira Isiv. I thought v'yashavti al kivroi, and I sat on the caver of the Ben Tzayir Moyer. Kaman nas lahod tanya irani dachas lehoisov leyasid aliyos. V'lama nichtava George Vikiboscha. Kaman Krab Eliezer the Tanya of Eliezer Omer Kol Ir. Sheyesh ba afilu mezuzah achas. If there's a city that even has one mezuzah, which means like one person in the whole place, Zok Rashi v'chol shekain echad ben achumshin, kol shekain that has a chumash in the city, or you say from Kol Nevi'im or a Novi or something, Shaskar Hashem Kshuvav. If there's anything in which the Shem Hashem is written, I'm sorry, the halacha of Ir Nidachas could not apply. Why? My time of Amar Krav is Kol Shalola Tikpoitz El Teich Rachma V'Saraf Tebeish, which means everything has to be burnt, including the Shem Hashem that would be in a mezuzah or in a chumash. V'chivon Ika mezuzah. Once there's a mezuzah there with the Shem Hashem, lo yevcher. You're not allowed to burn the mezuzah. The chsiv lo yisasun kein l'Shem alekechem. Right. The pasuk first lists all the things you're supposed to do to destroy avodah zarah, and then it says lo yisasun kein l'Shem alekechem. And again, Amar B'Yonison Ani Riyasiyah, I saw it v'yashavti al tila, and I sat on its hill. I guess it means the mound of rubble. No, I want to get into that. I'm going to address Rabbi Yonason too, but I want to just learn the third Rabbi Yonason, and then I'm going to address it. There was never a bias that had a nega. So why is there a whole parsha of bias with a nega in Tezriah or Tzimtzar? I think no, since Tezriah, the Rosh V'Kibbutz Char. Command Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon, the Tanan Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon Omer lo Elam in the bias Tomei at Yura Kishtei Grisin al Shtei Avodim B'Shtei Solom. Basically, in order for it to be a nega, it's not enough just to have on a flat wall a gris, a nega gris. It has to be in a corner, and it will be one long nega that will extend from the east-west wall to the north-south wall. It'll be a gris high, and together it'll be two grises wide. So there has to be a full gris on each wall, a full gris by gris on each wall, but they have to be connected. And we learned that from Sukkim. So there's a full gris by gris on each wall. My timer, where does he get this from inside the Psukim? Ksiv Kir, you see, Kir Abayis, and then it says Ksiv Kirais Abayis. How can it be in the wall of the house, singular, and in the walls of the house, plural? Ezel Kir Shuke Kirais, Habu Oymir Zek Karen Zavas. There was some place in the Tchum of Azra. They called it the sealed churva, which was referring to a house that was destroyed because it had a nega. That was marked off. People shouldn't walk over it to become tomei. The even nunugas mitama ba'oil, and amru avanim nunugas pinusha. So the first question is, okay, this is not Rabbi Yonason, but Rabbi Yonason was by the caver of a Ben Tzayir in Moyer, and he was by the ruins of an area of Achas. I don't understand Rabbi Yonason, like he didn't have anything better to do. He was on a tour of things that never happened. Like what crowd on Rabbi Yonason? So, and the other question is what Mati asked: is it a machlokes, a metzius? Did it happen or didn't it happen? So, I think he spoke out from the Ben Yoda, Rabbi Rosner. I was on the 401 at the time, so I was also focusing on traffic. But I think what he said is that we learned that even though Arba Mises Bezdin are bottle now because we don't have Sanhedrin, but the Mises themselves were not bottle, and whenever somebody does an affair that makes him be roy for skila, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes it that he should die in a way that's similar to skila, and so on and so forth. So what happened was Rabbi Yonason said, I was on a caver of a young boy who was killed in a skila type fashion. So that's what he meant. I was by the caver of a ben Saru Moyer. What he meant is there was a young child who was killed with skila. How you talking? Why should he be killed? He didn't do any affairs. So must have been that he was a ben Saru Moyer. So that's not so schwer anymore. And the same thing with the Anidachas. He was in a destroyed city. I guess he saw everyone was destroyed with Saif or his birth. So that's what he meant. He was just referring to they must have been in the Anidachas because why did this happen? Why did this child get killed with skila if he wasn't a B'tzar Moyer? It must be that because Baruch made it happen. It was B'tzar Moyer. Mati doesn't like that shot. The other question is, Rabbi Yonason was a kohen. What was he doing sitting on top of a cave? So the answer doesn't. Olav could mean literally, or al could mean literally, but al could also be figuratively nearby. But that's what I think the Yonason says, that he was by someone that could have been a ben Sayer Meir, but Lamaisa, he wasn't saying that by Mitzias there was an actual ben Sayer Meir that was judged accordingly. Zok Gemara weiter. Hoya echad men gidem. What if one of the parents, Rachman al didn't have a hand, or chiger, or limped, or elaim, or couldn't speak, or suma, or was blind, or cherish, or was deaf? Einay nasa ben Sayer Meir shenemar v'tafsu boy ava v'imai v'loy gidman. How could they grab him if they don't have hands? They have to carry him out. So if they can't walk, they surely can't carry him out. The Amru, they have to tell Bezin. They can't be mute. B'nei nuzeh, they have to be able to point and identify B'nei nuzeh. V'loy sumen. Einenu shemeya b'keleinu v'loy charoshin. So let's stop a second. Who said that he can't hear them because they're deaf? They can't be. They have to. He's not listening to us. It's a proof that they can't be deaf. He can't be deaf. What do you mean they can't be deaf? So Rashi explains that Charoshin einin yoidin im kibel devrei melav. If they're chershim, there's no way they can tell if he accepted their mussar. Shim amalem eini makabel einin shaymin loy. If he told them I'm not makabel, they can't hear it. V'alva b'shiroyin shei mekayim mitzvosim. Even though they see that he's not changing his behavior. Miu einenu shemei b'kelei. They have to be able to testify that he rejected what we said, and they can't be sure of that. The ikola fuche b'schusei, and therefore we could be melamed schus. Ulamedrash the b'shas hakoil ka'amrid le'shama. They have to be saying that when we originally told him the mussar he rejected, the fact that he might have changed his behavior later, that doesn't matter. They had to have said that right at the time he rejected. The Kulay, this whole passage is extra, so therefore we're medayik on everything. Okay. Masrin boy bifnei shloisha. They warn him in front of 3 people. Why do they have to warn him in front of 3 people? Normally you only need 2 edim. Zok Rashi. Masrin boy lav mishum asra gemura kashar averish shein loikin ela ba'asra. The asras edim boy. Normally it's not the parents who are masra, it's the edim who are. This is also going to be a Safek Asra because he's not doing any Isra now. These behaviors aren't things that he'll do right away. There's things that he'll do later, when he steals from them. They give him Musar so that he shouldn't continue to do that. And if he doesn't listen to his parents, then Malkadosh. So this isn't an official asra. This is just they got a warning to try to stop him. Then he will get malchus, and then if chazavekilkil, then he didn't bash from shloisha, and they would kill him if he turns out to be guilty. Then in niskal achu sham shloisha harishanim, the original people who were involved in giving him malchus, they have to be there by the Saktin or by the Dion of whether or not they're going to kill this Ben Sarumayra, because it says B'nei Nuzeh Zeh Shalaka B'fnechem. This same son who got Malchus in front of you earlier, so it has to be that same base. Shemas Mina, you see from here, B'inin Krakei D'Chsiv. There's a whole machlokes if when the pasuk specifies how something has to be, does it have to be exactly that way? The discussion we had was by a Mitzorah who gets to hire, they have to put blood on his thumb and on his earlobe. What if he didn't have a thumb? What if he didn't have an earlobe? So there was a shayla, what you do. There's one man that who held you can't be matar because you need krach dechsiv. It has to be exactly. The others say no, you put it close to where it would have been, right? You put it by the stub or whatever. But from our Gemara, where it says that he walks free if his parents aren't exactly this way, you see by inin krach dechsiv. So you don't have a right. Shiny hacha here. Normally you don't need krach dechsiv when the Torah lists off a set of parameters that have to be met. But here it's more. Because the kula kra yiserahu, the whole pasuk is an extra pasuk, as Rashi points out. The moti lemitla vaytesem shel shara ir who was called him. Why go through all the details? And since it goes through all the details, that tells us that in this particular case it is krach dechsiv, but it doesn't mean by default any requirement that the Torah gives in any other place, such as Messiah, would be krach dechsiv. Why wouldn't two Adam be enough to witness Tasra? Okay, I'm sorry. So three people are dayonim, as Rashi says. Gimel dayonim, but dayonim yechayvu malchus v'yolku shliach bezin kashar aloikin the malchus b'fnei gimel b'perka. Kama, we learned that you need a best of three. And it's that same Bezin of three that the Mishnah says has to be there if he reoffends, and then they're going to decide if they're going to kill him. Where does the Torah say anything about Malchus by a Ben Sarah Moira? We learned the Yisru from the Yisru. So it says by Ben Sarah Moira, I'm sorry. That Vayisru, I believe, is by Moti Shemra, right? So, but it says Vayisru by Moti Shemra. How do we know by Moti Shemra that the father who's Moti Shemra, that the husband who's Moti Shemra on this woman gets Malchus? Because it says Vayisru Isai by Moti Shemra, and it says Vayisru Isai by a Ben Sarah Meir. By a Ben Sarah Meir, it also is Ben, right? It's Ben Sarah Meir. So how do you know that that means Malchus? Because Uben mi Ben. Because there's another pasuk that talks about Malchus that has the word Ben, which is Va'aya and Bin HaKoysa Rosh. So Rabbi Vo was actually talking about how we know that a Moti Shemar gets Malchus. But in the process, we see that a Ben Saramar gets Malchus because the Moti Shemar we know from Ben Saramar, and Ben Saramar we know from Ben HaKoysa Rosh. Chazer v'Kilkel, then he gets to the big leagues needing the Chafkim. Frag the Gemara. How do we know that? So the Mishnah told us because it says B'nai Nuzeh, the same child that you already gave Malchus to. Didn't we just say that Zeh teaches us that they have to be able to point him out, meaning they have to be able to see? Zakta Gemara, we can learn two halachas from there. Because in Cain Lichtov B'nai who? My B'nai Zeh, Shemami Notarti, we can learn two things. So Zok Rashi, Lichtov B'nai who? If it's just to tell you that it has to be the same Bezdin, B'nai who would be enough. Zeh tells us that they have to be able to see him. What happens if Barach Achala Nimradinai? The Bezdin of 23 was deliberating as to whether or not he should be killed, and he escaped, he ran away. And then, when they captured him and they wanted to continue the deliberations, the Achach Hekiv Zokan Atachton. Now he's already out of the window of opportunity that it should be a Ben Sarimar. So the Lach is Potter. You don't finish it off. Zok Rashi, the Su Loy Daninale. Kimun the Ilov Hashta Allah Barkatalu. Because he can only be a Ben Sarimar from when he sees two Cyrus till he is a little bit more mature. So Rashi adds, since if he would have violated now, if he would have offended now, he wouldn't be chayiv misa. He doesn't fall into that window. So too, even if he offended during the time that that window was opened, Bezdin can't paskin on him anymore. The imisha nigmar dinei barach. But if they were goymer din that he had to be killed, and then he ran away before they carried out the verdict, the achach hekev zanatachtoin, then he'll be chayiv because they've already paskin on him, as Rashi says. V'mishum nigmar barach mishas kmar din havik agavar ketila. We already considered him a marked man. So the Rishonim ask, what do you mean? Didn't we learn at the beginning of the Masechta when it describes skila, it says even as he's on his way to do skila, there's a guy watching with a handkerchief, and there's a guy with a horse, and if they're going to find some schus for him, they're going to bring it back. So what do you mean, Gavra Katila, V'shuvei non lachabes, V'shuvei lachila? We see even by someone who's chayav skila.
Only one boy might have been.
Maskim, but Lamaisa, Rashi does say, Ein lonu lachabes b'schus. They shouldn't even try. So the Mefarshim explain that you don't try. Even there, you don't try. You're not trying. You're not trying to find a schus. But what if something comes up? They have to be available. But Avada, once they're passing on him, they're not looking to find the schus for him, but they still have to be there just in case some more information comes up. So you're saying here it wouldn't be relevant anyway. They pass on the way. Amar Chanina ben Noach shebirech es Hashem. A ben Noach who cursed Hashem. We learned that a ben Noach is also not allowed to do that. Right? We actually learned that there might be chumras even if he uses a kinoi, he'd be chayiv misa. Even if he didn't say Yaka Yosy is Yosy, right? There's certain chumras even by ben Noach. But the achach nesgayer, and then he became a ger potter. If he wasn't killed while he was a ger, he is going to be potter now. Why? Hoyel v'nishtana dinoi. Hoyel v'nishtana dinoi. Rashi says the ilmei kara as a goy. How would we pass it on him? Nidoi be'erechad uvedayin echad uvelay asra. Right? That's how you pass it on the goy. But now he has a new set of rules. Vilu over hashta b'din asra v'ten shel chav gimel ve'edim. And v'nishtana misatzai. Rashi is garish that I guess. The chol misas b'nei noich sayiv. We learned that what does a guy always get? Herod. Bilu over hashta bo libedai nebeskila. As a yid, he would get skila. V'hu yichai b'misa. As a guy, he was all even herod. Skila is much more severe. So how could we give him a more severe punishment that he's entitled to hilchos potter?
How's it done?
We didn't even discuss yet how this is relevant to our Mishnah. So we're just starting with it. We're starting innocently. You're already a step ahead. Why? Name a Messiah. Let's see if we're giving a raya from our Mishnah. Now you can ask. If the Ben Torah ran away before they were going to din, the Achach Hikiv is gonna tachtoin, Potter will be Potter. My timer. Why is he Potter? Lav Mishum Darminon. Isn't it because we say Hol Ishtani? Now that he's in a different situation. He's Potter. So if that's the case, you have a beautiful raya to what Rabbi Chanina said. Maybe you don't have a raya. Shiny hacha the other hachala barkatolu. By the case of B'Torah Moira, he wouldn't be chayiv misa at all if he did it. There he's chayiv misa. It's a different misa. If he's not chayiv misa now, there we could understand that he walks free. But if he'd be chayiv misa, just a different misa, lav dafka do we say he walks free? Zok Rashi. Shiny yacha the ilu over hashta la barkatolu. Aval hacha ilu over hashta barkatolu. He would be chayiv miskila. Aval gav in the shtana umi sasoi loy mifter. You don't have a raya from the Torah Moira that it's mifter, but the new lebedina the hashta. I think. I guess not lagabe mevorach Hashem, right? Toshma, it's like going bankrupt, right? I hear, yeah. I guess not. Toshma, we probably have too many gerim if that was the case. Toshma, because the Gemara said at the end. Remember, we learned the Gemara says that by goyim, since they're so poets and cursing Hashem, they don't even kill them anymore. Toshma, how about the second half of the Mishnah? And then chayiv. Toshma misayfet yufta. So now you have a kasha. Chayiv alma afal gav de ishtani lo yifter. Right? Even though now he was nismala ziknot, nevertheless we still kill him. So it's going to be thrown up Chanina, who says that he's potter hoyel v'ishtani. Lamai nema hoyel v'ishtani. So to Gemara, I'm sorry. Nigmardini comment. You're asking me a kasha from Nigmardinai. Nigmardinai gavra katila. The Rabbi Chanina's halacha wasn't a case of Nigmardinai. It was a case of they want to paskin on him now. Nigmardinai is a whole different story. So you can't ask me a kasha from there. Tashma. How about Ben Noach Shehikesh Chaveri? A Ben Noach who killed somebody. A Ben Noach who killed somebody, Rashi says, what is the halacha? Herek, David B'Sayif. Or Uba Aleshus Chaveri, or he was Mazana. Again, what is the Isra Baleshus Chaveri? Potter Mishum de Ilu Ovid Hashtar Lav Bakatol. Okay, so let's stop a second. So Ben Noach Shehikesh Chaveri, Uba Aleshus Chaveri, Vinis Gayer. A Yid who kills a guy is not Chayv Misa. A Yid who is Ba on an Eshish to a Goy, we don't recognize any Kedushin, they're also not a Chiv Misa. So the halacha is Ben Noach Shehikesh Chaveri, Ba Aleshus Chaveri, Vinis Gayer, Potter. Because as a Yid, he wouldn't have been Mechuyev for these same things. But also Cain, the Yisrael, what if he killed a Yid? Or if he was Mizana with an Eshish? So that remains also now as well, and then when this guy, then he will be chayv. Break the Gemara. Why? V'amai. Why did you say the same as far as Rabbi Chanina? Nema hoyel ve'ishtini ishtini. Maybe right now his miso changed, right? Zok Rashi Yisrael, kigoyin shaharik es Yisrael, or baal es Yisrael, when this guy chayiv. The other hashto bakatolu. If he did that now, he'd also be chayiv miso. But the type of misa would have been different, and the type of din would have been different. The Abelgab din the Shtadinoi, now Lodin Ve'eda, he needs 23, Bezdin, Ve'edin Basra, Yavad Hashta, Misasoi Loyishtini, the Retech Nami Hashim Saif. Oh, and the type of misa that he was going to get would have been the same, but it would have been a different type of din. So Zakir Vamai, name Ahayel Ve'ishtini, Ishtini, Zakimara, Dinoi Umisasoi Boim. In order to say Hayel Ishtini Ishtini, it's not enough that the conditions change, that we patkin on them differently. We need a much more robust prosecution system with the Bezdin. You also need that the type of mitzvah that he was going to get changed. Otherwise, we don't pater him. Now, Sheikh in Reb Chanina's case, everything changes. Break the Gemara, Bahai Dina Ishtini. Even though his din was ishtini, because now it has to be a proper bezdin, misasei lo ishtini, it was going to be besayif before, it's besayif now. Zok more bishtamur etzayach. I agree. Make her sayif, v'hashta sayif. A guy gets sayif for everything, and now that he's a yid for ritzicha, he'll also get herek, because that is how we kill Jews who are murderers. Ela eshish make her sayif. When he was a guy, he would have been killed with herek. But we know a yid who's mezana gets chenek, v'hashta chenek. So, Oibazoi, how would you explain this brisa that the guy is potter? That the guy is potter. I'm sorry. Why do we say the guy is chayiv? Why is the guy chayiv? In the case of znus, it's a different misa. So, tomorrow maybe it's speaking b'nair hamu'urasa, because we know a guy who's boil nair hamu'urasa, since they don't recognize such type of marriage, he gets the same misa as a yid would get. So he was going to get skila before, he'll get skila now. So Zok Gemara maybe speak with Naim Urasa, the EDVD Beskila. The who also came be Israel. Correct Gemara, how could you say that? But also came be Israel. Dumya, the Ashish Chavera Katani. It says, what was the case? If he was born, the Ashish who was a goy, then he's potter, right? Then he's potter once he becomes a Yid. But if he was born, the Ashish of Israel, then he's chayiv once he becomes a Yid. That's a case of Eshish, right? It's not a case of Naira Murasa, it's a case of Eshish, because we're comparing it to an Eshish of a Goy. The Eshish of a Goy, there was a full Nesun and there was a full Bia, right? Because otherwise it's not an Eshish for a Goy.
The guy was also married.
Because he wouldn't have been Chayiv. A Goy is not Mechuyev for being Ba on a Naira Hamurasa to a Goy, because first of all, there is no such thing as Eresh for a Goy. Remember we said that a Goy's marriage is not recognized unless they actually live together. Right, even if she wants nivala is not recognized as a marriage by a goy, so it has to be speaking with a nesua. If it's a nesua, once again, meikarasayiv v'hashta chenek. So why do they get killed? Zok to Gemara, Ella kala b'chamura meshach shaycha. He was originally as a goy, he would have been mechuyev herek, right? Now that he is a Yisrael, we give him chenek. Why? Because he was going to have a more severe misa. So we're not making him pay more because he became a Jew. We're downgrading him. That you could do. That's not a problem. Because he could say, when I violated, I wasn't going to get such a big punishment. Why should you give me a bigger punishment for what I violated if when I violated, that big punishment wasn't coming to me? But here we're saying we're giving you a break. If we're giving you a break, then you would still give it to him. So Gemara's position now is the reason why, if he was boil and Eish Isha Yisrael, and then he became a Jew, he still gets Misa, is because he was going to be Chayav Herek, and now he's going to be Chayav Chemek, and it's not treating him unfairly for Keret. He's getting a break. That works out very good if you hold that Herek is more Chomer than Chemek, he's getting a break. El Reb Shimon, the Omar Chemek Chomer, but Reb Shimon holds that Chemek is more Chomer. So you have the same Kasha Ma'ikala Meimar. How could you give him Chemek now? It's not fair, because when he violated, he should have only been Mechuyev and Herek, which according to Reb Shimon is a lesser Misa. Zok Gemara will have to say is that Reb Shimon Sover Law Ketana Devei Menashe Damar Kol Misa Amur Levnei Noach Einoi Elachene. Remember, there's a sheet of Bnei Menashe who says that not every guy gets Herek, every guy automatically gets Chenek. So it's not a problem. He's going to get Chenek then, and he gets Chenek now. Zok Gemara, okay, Bishlema Eishes Meikar Chenek V'Asher Chenek. That's why if he was Mezana with a Eishes Yisraelis when he was a guy, and then he was Megayer, he will still get Chenek. El Ritzeach, but a Ritzeach Meikara Chenek. Originally, as a guy, he's going to get Chenek because a guy gets Chenek for every Aver that he does, according to the Bnei Menashe. V'Ash the Saif. And now he's going to get downgraded to Saif. So that's not a problem, because we already said, Kal B'Chamura Meshach Shaycha. Downgrading his Misa won't be a problem. Let's suggest that we could bring a raya. To what to Reb Chanina, the Omar, Bedina the Hash, the Boile Medani, that we paskin based on his current status. Sorcha, the Achakach Boga. What is the halacha if a Nair Hamurasa was Mizana? And normally she would get Skila, but before they had a chance to paskin on her in Bezdin, Bagra, she became a Bageris, which means now her Misa would have been downgraded to Chenek from Skila. So the halacha is Tidain Bechenek. Beskila my time alone. Why doesn't she get Skila? At the time of her violation earned her a Skila. Must be because of Reb Chanina's Svara. Lav Mishum Dehoyel Ishtini. Obviously, it's because since now her status has changed, and now her Misa would only be Chenek, therefore she only gets Chenek. The Koshkein Hacha de Ishtin Lagamri, and surely by a Ger, Jenis Gayer, who changed completely, surely as well, we should say that he's Potter. Correct Gemara, but it doesn't make sense, because Reb Chanina said that the Ger is Potter and Gansen, but that's not the halacha here. Latana Tani Tidain Beskila. Rabbi Yochanan says that she would actually get Skila, regardless it's shver, because we're giving her Chenek, right? So we're not patting her and Gansen. Dr. Rashi, we Skila my time Eloi, Miss Dana. Why doesn't you get Skila? Mishum dechivan de ishtini gufa ishtini katala. When he did Gamila Miftara. So Dr. Rashi, she's not Potter and Gansen by Reb Chanina, she's Potter and Gansen. When he did Gamila Miftara, Mishum de Kala bechamura meshach shaycha. That's only because Kala bechamura meshach shaycha, but even by a goy we would do that. Koshkein hacha the ishtin lagamri bein bedine bein b'misasai, by a ger, his whole process changes. And since he's not chayiv, that means he's Potter and Gansen. So Dr. Rabbi Yochanan says she would get Skila. The Mikara Alpha Gav the Ishni Gufa lo Ishni Ktola Hakanami Nidaini Kid the Mikara the Misasa Eka.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Sure. It's not Potter.
The Gemara wanted to bring a raya from the Gemara wanted to bring a raya to Reb Chanina that you're Potter. The Gemara says you don't necessarily have a raya, because maybe she still gets her original Misa. But the Gemara wanted to bring a raya. You see, she doesn't get the skill.
She's definitely a shtan, right?
That's right.
It's still, not only is she getting the less, she's getting the same.
By the skill, you mean?
Yeah.
Right. So then it won't be a raya to Reb Chanina from here. You're saying it'll be shver Reb Chanina. Because by a Gerish and this Geyer, there's a much bigger Shina, because not only was it Nishtana Misasa, it was Nishtana Dina as well. So it's not a Kasher B'china, but you don't have a Raya. Okay, let's learn the next Mishnah, and then we will stop. Ben, what? Okay, 6:64. Okay, we will stop now. It's because I'm late. It's because I was late. Okay, shkoich. Tomorrow's daf is a very important daf, because it talks about